Hi guys, I'm Dan, and I'm CEO and co-founder of a couple of businesses, one called Jaffa and one called Fan Insight. And we basically are in the sports industry, and we're working with the Aldridge Foundation to put together a fantastic panel around people that work in the sports and fitness industry, and basically to give you a bit of an idea around their journeys to date and what the options for you might be looking forward to the future. So we've got a fantastic panel of Fadumo, Mayowa, Ahmed, and actually we're basically going to hand over to them so they can introduce themselves shortly. But just before that, I wanted to hand over to Ashanti just to give you a bit of an introduction around him and the organisation BComs, which he's involved with.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Dan. I'm Ashanti. I work for Refresh Sports, which is sports management company working with footballers, broadcasters, and football managers. But I also work across BComs, which is the Black Collective of Media in Sport. This is all about inspiring young people and Black journalists, creating connections and holding networking events so that underrepresented groups can have a bigger say in the sports media, because if people are being written about, the people that are being written about need to also see themselves within those that are writing about them. So we've run a couple of programs, in particular the diversification of the sports media program, which was a year-long program which saw young people go to sports stadia, large companies such as the Times, the Mirror, the Oval, Surrey Cricket Ground, Chelsea Football Club, so that they can speak to industry leaders and learn a lot more about the sports media and if that's a career path that they'd like to follow.
Fantastic. And yeah, so now at this point, Ashanti and I will do less of the speaking. We're handing over to our amazing panelists. Guys, kicking off with Fadumo, do you want to give a quick introduction to kind of, who you are and what your day job entails?
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me onto this. My name is Fadumo. I'm the social media editor at Telegraph for their women's sports team. So a fairly new role. I've been in it for a year, which is really amazing. And it's my first national sports media role. And similar to everyone else in this group, Mayo and Ahmed, and we met through the BComs program. So kind of just signed up online in hopes of gathering some type of experience into the sporting world. I think unlike a lot of people that come into the sporting world, I didn't really have an epiphany at the age of 10 where I wanted to be a journalist. I kind of did a couple of things, and then at 22 was like, oh, maybe I should try a bit of journalism. And yeah, it becomes a really good stepping stone for me to kind of meet lots of people within the industry and find out very quickly what areas I could work into, and that sports media exists beyond being a presenter and a broadcaster, which is what you see so often. And then from that, or just before that, actually, I started a podcast with a friend called I Think She's Offside, which is about bringing underrepresented conversations to life. So talking to women from marginalized communities about their experience in sport, and really just finding and speaking to people who've done really well in sport. So we spoke to Jeanette Kouachi, Christina Horogu, and we spoke about obviously their winning medal moments, but also what makes them an athlete, which is equally important, the kind of stuff that people are interested in. Yes, I did a lot of that work, and then eventually led for my role at the Telegraph, which is really good and I'm really enjoying.
Amazing. Ahmed, over to you next.
So thank you for having me on firstly. My name is Ahmed. I am the Bournemouth writer for The Athletic. I'm actually quite newer than Fadumo. I started in November, so I'm still very much a baby in this industry, but very much happy for the opportunity that I was given. Before that, I won a scholarship to study my NTTJ, which is the official journalist qualification. And that was actually supposed to be with covering the Olympics, which obviously didn't happen because of the pandemic, with Sportsbeat, which was also the media company, which was housed in the same journalism school, News Associates. So after that, I graduated earlier in the summer and accepted a role in The Athletic, which is amazing because in terms of entry-level roles, I hadn't really seen one up until the one I was offered. So pretty over the moon to get that. It's actually as of now, it's been very, very busy. I'm not sure if you've seen the news of Henry being linked to the manager's role. That's just been my whole day yesterday, and it's going to be my day today, and it's probably going to be my day tomorrow as well.
And probably the day after too. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, every single day, never a dull moment.
Fantastic. And last but not least,
Thanks for having me, Dan. So I'm Maiwa. I am the brand and editorial officer at Versus, which is a sports publisher. Very similar to Ahmed, I've been in that role since the end of September. And my role there is essentially working a lot with community organizations to put their sort of news through a new lens to a younger audience, but also sort of document and curate to a younger demographic of sports fan and really be a home for that new sports fan. So I'm sure, as everyone knows, there's a new generation of loving long form caps, really looking at Instagram as an inspirational place to digest sports content away from traditional forms. And that's what Versus is a platform. Outside of that, I also have a podcast called Stoppage Time TV. So that again is something very similar, which essentially looks at sports but makes it relatable almost to people who are from where I'm from or speak how I speak and traditionally may have looked at sports media and thought, oh, but I can't really relate to that. It almost brings it a bit closer to home. I also do a bit of 360 freelancing as well. So a bit of podcasting, a bit of research, just here and there. And I'm both very similar to these guys. I almost always look at journalism or sort of the sports media industry as something that, oh, okay, this looks really interesting to me. It started as a hobby and an interest. And through BComs, going through that program and looking at the landscape, I realized that where the UK was similar to where the States was probably years ago, where things were changing a little bit. You could kind of make something out of nothing. You could make your own sort of platform. You could really push a narrative through your lens and bring your sort of personality to it, which is kind of common play now, but it was not always the case. And that's how I've managed to create a path almost for myself, and hopefully long may it continue.
Fantastic. And look, I think that's really great that, you know, you guys are all actually making such strides in the industry. And as we know, the sports industry is notoriously tough to get into because, you know, a lot of people are sports fans, a lot of people want to work doing what they love, and everybody finds, you know, a pathway there. My own experience, you know, I had to start my own business to get into the sports industry, which is a very tough and arduous process. And actually going all the way back to, you know, people are watching this will be school age and looking at their options of what might be around the corner. And it'd be great to kind of find out from you guys what your thinking was when you were at school, but also like how you then took that forwards, your journey to get to where you are now. Because as all of you pretty much have said, you've got many different hats you wear and different things that are going on. And it would be good to kind of find out a bit more about your journey from school and your thinking to where you are today. If we reverse the order, start with, you know, V and Versus first in alphabetical order reversed. Let's kick off back with yourself and Duat, and let's go from there.
So it's that's a really good question, because when I look back to when I was younger, it's almost like I always sort of prepped myself for this sort of path, but never knew. So in secondary school, I did a lot of sort of your Jack Petchey speaking challenges. Back then, it wasn't Twitter, it was Facebook. So after every single football match, I was writing long form sort of my opinions on football, but I never knew that was almost scaring me to be in a situation where those things I was doing when I was younger and just doing it for the fun of it would then come to this. Big part of what helped me and kind of push that direction as well is sort of conversation. So in secondary school, once a match has happened, loads of people are talking about stuff. And I always used to ask people questions about, oh, why do you think Drogba's not a good striker? Or why do you think Henry left Arsenal? All this type of things. And naturally, without knowing, because I didn't have anyone to tell me at the time, that sort of skill set of asking questions, developing on things, writing threads online that people are looking at and saying, okay, you know what, I really like into that, is what's needed in this new era of sports media. Like if you go into Twitter now, you'll see so many different threads or journalists actually doing these things I've mentioned. But at a younger age, I didn't know that was a vet. So I did all of that and it was just a passion, it was a hobby, but I didn't realize that would then come back and help me now. I only realized the power of it when, through having conversations in WhatsApp groups with my friends, etc., and stuff like that, people are like, oh, this is actually really good. People that actually want to tune into this. And that's how I started my first podcast, which is Full-Time Podcast. So I thought, if the people I'm having conversations with are really enjoying it, then I'm sure someone else will. And the great thing about right now is there's so many easy means of doing your own thing. And of course, because we're so connected in the world through social media or WhatsApp group and our friends, once we create things, it's very easy to then say, okay, you guys have a look at this. And we're such in a content world now that people are consuming things every single day. It doesn't matter how much is out there. You can consume something for 1 hour and consume something here and consume something in the background. And that's kind of what led me into this path. I just started creating stuff. I realized, you know what, people like this, it's cool. Okay, how can I then create this into a job? How can I then write more? How can I change those things or make those things I did for free and for fun when I was a youngster into something that people value now? And lo and behold, that's what I kind of do for my day job now. The things I was doing in my mom's house at the age of 16, just enjoy myself.
That's amazing. And did you, just for clarity as well, did you say in that about something about Drogba not being that good? Did I pick that up?
So I'm a Chelsea fan, and yeah, when I was younger, there was all this sort of thread. It's so funny how life works. It's come back and now, but people be like, "Oh, Drogba's not that good. He hasn't got that many Premier League goals, or he doesn't score for X amount of games." And it's like, but you guys can see the influence. I'm the only Champions League winner amongst all of my friends here. Why are you doubting this guy's ability? So yeah, it is funny because all of that whole culture of playground discussion of how can I wind you up almost, or how can I prove my point, was almost like a training ground for what myself and many people who are working within the sports media space now are doing. And I guess maybe because we don't always make that parallel, or we don't see that example, we kind of feel like in order to give your opinion, you have to be a former player, or you have to have done X amount of things within the game, or to a certain extent, because of how we've seen it in terms of Sky Sports and everything, you have to wear a suit, or you have to do this and that. I think people feel that there's this glass ceiling, but as we see now, there's so many people doing things on YouTube, so many people doing things on Instagram. TikTok has become a massive opportunity where people are just sort of creating content that F2 struggled to create on YouTube years ago. People are making trick shots on TikTok now. So there's so many different avenues that if you just enjoy something and go after it, don't have to be a writer, but you can be a presenter online, you can do challenges. There's so many different things that are possible now. You just have to connect the lines almost.
For sure. And yeah, it's really good to find out a bit more about kind of, your thinking and where you are now with it in terms of just doing something you loved and, just did on the side and taking that forwards into a career. And Faduma, what about you in terms of your journey, your thinking when you were at school and kind of how you ended up here?
Yeah, I think it was a lot less thought out than mine was one. Like mine was just like a process of like trial and error and doing anything and everything that I could. I think from school, I was always like very sporty and like very just love the idea of like playing as many sports as I could. Like I was born in Denmark, so I moved here when I was 11 years old. And obviously like not speaking English is hard enough for anyone. And then like when you're 11 and, being in like English and maths classes and not finding out like, no one wants to pair up with you because you can't speak a language. But then when you play sports, it's like sports is universal. Everyone just wants to bless player regardless of what they do. So I had that advantage, I guess, from a young age. So I played a lot of sports and just really thoroughly enjoyed that. And I think when it came to choices, I come from a very traditional household. Like I think if someone asked my mom today what I do for a living, she wouldn't be able to tell you. She just knows I work at a newspaper and probably work too many hours for her liking. But in terms of like career, again, like I said, journalism wasn't like an option for me in that sense. Like I thought, most of my friends want to be doctors, I'm going to do that. Then I quickly realized science wasn't my strength. So it was just a process of like elimination. I went to university, wanted to be a teacher, tried teaching for like 6 months, hated it. Then I was like, tried work for local authority for a bit. And then I actually found a really interest, which was in youth work. And I think from there, that's kind of where the interest in sports journalism came about, because I was like, I did a lot of stuff with young people. We constantly had debates about who was a better athlete, who was a better footballer. And it was like, these kids had these really strong opinions about who was the best athlete. And it's just debating and arguing with them kind of gave me I would have these debates with them for like 10 minutes of the day, but it's like, it would always run for a bit longer. So it kind of inspired me to come up with the platform of putting on a podcast and giving people the option to listen to it for a bit longer in that sense. But it was definitely a case of just like persevering and trying out as many things as I could to kind of eventually be like, oh, I like this one for now.
That's amazing. And, you've mentioned quite a few things within that in terms of you've tried different things. You came from a very traditional household. There's probably some people watching this, feeling similar pressures or not quite sure of exactly where they want to be at this moment. What advice would you give to anybody that's kind of potentially struggling with different options or different things that they might be wanting to do and they're not quite sure? What advice would you give to them?
I think it's just, I think in hindsight, looking back on it, I think it's just important to do something you enjoy. Like I picked a lot of very, I think, traditional subjects that, were expected of me. Like I picked all my A levels were like maths and science, and I didn't pass any of them, which is like not good, but I didn't enjoy any of them. Do you know what I mean? I was blindsided by the fact that I did well at maths GCSE, which is not the same as doing well at maths A level, actually, which is massive. But I think it was just doing just like what you enjoy, and then what you enjoy is always going to change. Like what I enjoyed at 15, like it's wild to think that at 15 what you enjoy should therefore be what you pick for the rest of your life, which is like, no, your interests change if you grow as a person in lots of ways. So if you change your mind at 18 or 20 or 25 or 30 and so on, it's like that doesn't really matter. It's just that you've just got to do something you enjoy, and naturally like that will to kind of persevere and motivate yourself to do it will just come with it. But if you're doing something that you don't enjoy, it's quite harder to do that.
Yeah, no, totally true. Really good points there from your side. And Ahmed, last on this one, talk to us about your journey as well, because it sounds like it's been a COVID impacted one recently, but definitely it'd be good to go earlier to your school days and getting to this point.
Indeed. I felt very, looking back now at my time at school, I felt very disenfranchised. I was always the kid who was expected to get the A stars and the A's, but I just never really gave that much of a, so I just kind of coasted through my GCSEs and even kind of coasted through my A levels. It wasn't until I got to university where I actually understood how to write an essay, and I actually understood what was expected of me and how to write assignments and how to actually structurally write things. And I was just so astounded that I had to learn all of that myself. I went through the whole of school without actually learning much. And I felt like a big part of the reason why I was disenfranchised was because the end goal was always the grades. It was never really for me, or at least from my school, for my upbringing as well. Speaking culturally as well, similarly to Vidumo, a lot of my peers, a lot of the elders in my family, they wanted me, obviously they saw I was bright, and they wanted me to go into those traditional career paths, like a lawyer. And I actually did I went to university to study business and law. But I got to my final year in university after I completed a Barclays work experience week. And I realized I worked so hard. I worked so hard to get that work experience place. And towards the end, I even got to Wednesday. I didn't even get to the end of the week, and I realized I cannot keep doing this. I don't want to go into law. I hate this thing. So it forced me to sit there and think, what do you actually want to do? Going back to what Maya said about school and arguing with your friends about football and sports in general, and that being a training ground for, just skills and things that you have. I instantly, okay, well, I love football, and I'm from uni, I'm doing pretty well. I know how to write, I know how to structure pieces. Maybe I can be a football writer. And then it led me to put pieces together in that regard. Fast forward to the end, actually, while I was in my third year, and all my friends are figuring out what to do with their lives, and everyone's got these placements at big law firms, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm trying to do. I knew in the back of my mind, if I left home and I came home, if I left university and came home with a first class honors, I'd be granted at least a year by my mum to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And that was kind of my short-term plan. And then one day, miraculously, I came across a internship opportunity with BComs, which Ashanti is affiliated with. And it was just an internship position, but that was my essentially break into the industry, because it allowed me to familiarize myself with not only how the industry works, but big hitters and movers and shakers in the industry, like the people, the producers behind the scenes, the people you don't necessarily see, the real decision makers. And it was a role which allowed me to properly understand the disadvantages for people of color in this industry. So allowed me to ask why we are so underrepresented in this thing. And it allowed me to be the change that I wanted to see, essentially. And it only, emboldened me to go into that career path. I think when it was actually meant to be for the summer, that internship, but it actually went on until December, I think, Ashanti. So staying on for a lot longer and learning everything that I did, it really stood me in good stead to then get my scholarship, which I won with the Sports Journalists Association, and then with the Athletic now. So, I mean, back in school, I never really thought journalism was for me because it was just never something that was communicated to me like that. If you would have asked me what my impression of a journalist was back then, it would be someone sat in Starbucks with a MacBook, just writing away, and that didn't really appeal to me back then. But as Maiwa touched on, and as Fuduma touched on earlier as well, it's just so much to it now. It's not just a person who writes. It's not just someone who has a podcast. It's not just a presenter. It's not just someone who wears suits. It's not just someone who is looks like 90% of the industry. There's a change coming, and it's very refreshing to not only be a part of that change, but to spark the mind to keep that change going as well. So yeah, back in school, I didn't really have that idea I wanted to be a journalist. It only really started to come into my mind recently.
Kind of switching it up now, so open house. So anybody that wants to kind of jump in, and answer a question, please do. And we've all, touched on and in different ways articulated journeys. Some of those involve university, and actually, like even before COVID, university necessarily isn't for everybody. And actually, from especially now COVID has happened, increasing fees, it's a lot of money to go potentially and do webinars or do distance learning, and that might not be the route for everybody. And if somebody wasn't looking at university or didn't want to do the university route, or found other routes that they could get involved with, what's some advice and different things? And you've all done your own different things on top of kind of just the standard go to uni job applications. You've found other ways to kind of diversify your talents and kind of grow that way. What other opportunities do you think there are that people could do almost today, even as somebody still in school? What other opportunities could people actually tangibly do today, which could set themselves up in a good place for the future?
Do you want to go, Mayo? I feel like we both got out.
It's a really good question. Touching on that from my experience, it's funny because me and Ahmed actually went to the same university. I did oil, gas and energy management. I did a graduate scheme after for 2 years, and then I realized, I need to do what I want to go into. But it's funny, everything I'm doing now, I don't actually have a qualification for. I don't have a journalism qualification. I've not studied anything a day in my life. Everything that I've managed to get within this space has come from putting myself out there, trying different things and almost showcasing proof of concept. I always say to people, if you believe in something and you believe that you can do it, once you've got that proof of concept, you can say, you know what, this is it. I've proven I can do it. You don't need the qualification almost all the time to say that, okay, this is my entry. And don't get me wrong, qualifications, university is great because there's so many skills and things you learn, but that's not the only path. I mean, there's scholarships or apprenticeships. There's so many different things that can allow you to learn. But in this day and age right now, I mentioned it at the top, you can actually create from your house. You can pick up your phone and record something and edit it. And now that everyone's so tech savvy, or they know mates that are tech savvy and everything, it just makes it even easier. So even if you wanted to, let's say, I want to become a writer, or I want to make threads and everything, there are people that probably watch this, that probably sit at home and make threads like something, I don't know, why Arsenal's Invincible was the best season ever. And they will sit down and they'll give 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 reasons for it. That is nearly an article in itself. It's just about, okay, how do I then convert that into something that will then be sit on a website? So self-starting is a really, really strong thing, especially if you've identified something you're passionate about and it comes easily to you. Changing that into what it needs to be then is then easier. But I would say getting up and just trying things is really, really, really key. I mean, I talked about the Facebook stuff. Apart from that, I never really was a writer. I wrote essays yet, but like Ahmed, I got my first class from uni yet, but I never sat down to write articles. And even the stuff I write now, I wouldn't call it your traditional journalism. I mean, a lot of the stuff I've written is about the influence on music on football, or how Sunday league teams are changing football fandom forever. It's not what you traditionally think is, oh, okay, that's an article I'll sit down and read. But in terms of what everyone is tuned into right now, that's what we're all talking about. That's what we see. That's what's in front of us. So you can change, you can create these things. It's just about trying it and see where it goes from there. But like I said as well, there's so many apprenticeships. There's so many. I know when we did BComs, London Sport were kind of helping us at the time. They had opportunities. There's so many different. Even like what Ahmed said, Ahmed got internship with BComs, and what that allowed him to do was learn about the industry, gain contacts, and see that okay, these are areas that I can learn about. The more well-rounded you are in different things, it really, really becomes beneficial for you because you can flex your muscle in different areas.
So diving in as well, like a little bit deeper on what you've just shared as well, like self-starting and being a self-starter, proactive, really important. But on the flip side, it's also really hard, and it can be quite tough to, get yourself into that, when you open yourself up a little bit, you're almost opening yourself up for some hurt as well. So it'd be great to hear a little bit more about, like, do you know what, when I first started, this was really great, or this was really bad. And sometimes I was like, what? Because you're here now with it, but there's got to be some dark times, or, times where you just thought, what am I doing? Great to share a bit of kind of the journey you've been with all of you in different ways for those kind of times, because it's not all fun and games. We know that. So yeah, it'd be great to hear a bit more on that.
Yeah, there's no sort of reward without sacrifice, right? I mean, I was doing my grad scheme, working ridiculous amounts of hours, and then I would get home and then I'll try and write pieces or podcasts and everything. And literally, it's almost like you're juggling two plates. There was times where on my lunch break, I was trying to get pieces of content finished off. And you do have those moments you're like, you know what, am I ever going to get a shot, or am I ever going to get a break, or am I ever actually going to be able to do something? Is anyone ever going to realize what I'm doing? Am I actually going to get paid for stuff I'm doing? That's another thing as well, because people, you might create your own content or your own podcast, and you think people are telling you, oh, this is sick, this is great, well done, it's amazing. It's like, yeah, but I'm putting everything into it and nothing's coming up. But when you believe in it and you keep pushing, those things will come. Like what you're looking, and I think that's a key part of it as well. Within this space, I remember having a conversation with I did like a little consultancy sort of thing for someone, and they said to me, you're on good money at the moment in this graduate scheme you're on. If you wanted to come into the industry, there's so many people that want to come into this space, and you probably don't have the qualifications, quote unquote qualifications they have. You're going to have to start from the bottom. And I had to sit down and I thought to myself, okay, am I willing to make that jump? And I thought to myself, for my peace of mind, if that's what had to be done, I would do it, because I really enjoy this. And in the long run, this is going to bring me happiness. And with my work ethic, things will come. But yeah, sometimes it is hard, and it is an industry that is so competitive, but there's so many opportunities that beyond what you can imagine. Like the Euros is happening this year, the amount of opportunities that can happen within organizations, talk less of individually, is massive. You look at the people that have kind of gone before sort of our generation now, like your Poets and Rouge, they started from YouTube, self-starting, and then corporate and organizations looked at them and said, you know what, you guys understand it, bring you in. And the industry is so big, like Ahmed's touched on. I feel like we only saw stuff like writers, but there's producers, there's back of house, there's editors, and these are all positions as well that hold so much power. And to be honest, they need people like us, like on the call right now, in those positions, because if we don't fill those positions and it's just talent like us filling positions, there's still a mismatch in terms of what goes up. So it's just about researching and getting through those hard moments where, you know what, you may not have the motivation, or you may not have been paid for a piece, or you're not finding work. But if you keep pushing, you're really determined, it will come. It will.
So diving in on that and kind of opening up for everybody on this one, like one of the key things you've just been touched on is people. Like people deal with people get inspiration from different people, set pathways for other people, and people can open doors. Like what advice, or if anyone's got like an individual story maybe about individual people that have made an impact on their journey, even if it's just their mentality to get to where they are, that'd be great to hear a little bit from as well. But also, like, if somebody was starting out or wanted to start out and get, the word mentor gets thrown around a lot, but actually somebody just to talk to, or to try and guide them, or, navigate them through some pretty, tough waters sometimes in sports and journalism and beyond. What advice would you give around somebody wanting to, speak to somebody already in the industry, and how to approach them and do it in the right manner to actually get get something away, as well as individual people that have actually helped you in your career, and some examples of that would be fantastic.
I think with sports journalism, people often look to like the top writers for guidance, and you know, you'll go to someone who's a chief sports writer. So the case of the Telegraph is Oliver Brown, and you know, someone like that probably hasn't got a lot of time to give, and it's like in high demand in terms of the quality of the work that they're making. But I've always found that just linking in with even writers who are just finding their feet in their career is equally important, because you don't know like what type of place they're going to be in a couple of years time, and they can really give you the kind of those very realistic steps because they've just gone through them. Like, you know, someone like Ahmed has just gone through those steps in the last 6 months. So it's probably a lot more realistic than going and seeking guidance from someone who's done it, you know, 20, 30 years ago, who's probably has a very different form of qualifications, and, you know, who might still be using shorthand, which is a completely different world to us now because we don't use shorthand.
Let's dive in on that right now. Let's play it out. Somebody reaches out to you. How do they even reach out to you? Is it on social media? Is it on LinkedIn?
Like, you know, so like I think one example I can give is like when I kind of decided I was gonna go and like, you know, have a try at like the world of journalism. I think I was working for a local authority, like as a sports development officer, and then I just took a day off. And the reason I went to a Kick It Out event, and the reason why I went was because I was following Jeanette Quach, who's a former Olympian, and she was hosting the event and it was free. So I was like, well, it's free. I can take the day off. So it's not going to cost me a lot of money. And then I just showed up with like no plan besides like, hey, you might remember me from like 5 years ago. I really hope you do. And then being like, I want to be a sports journalist. And she was like, so what have you done? I was like, nothing. And then she was like very honest with me, like, okay, cool, you've done nothing, but if you're serious, like this is what you should do in the next year, and then come back to me, which I did. So I think it's that element of like efficiency and self-starting, which you do, but also signing up to things on social media. I think Twitter's a great platform. If you're signed up with like the likes of Beacom, Kick It Out, and Football Blacklist, then you're able to see where those events are. Like Beacom's regularly puts out whenever the course starts, it's like a year, you know, we signed up for it, and I found the application online. I found it on Twitter. And then I just dropped DMs to people who may have done different courses before to be like, oh, you know, have you got a spare like 10 minutes, or can I send you a question over email, etc. And most people will try and help. They might not get back to you straight away. And you know, I'm a big believer like that when someone says no to you, it doesn't really mean no. It's just like not right now. So you can just go back to them again until they eventually get sick of you.
So Ahmed, let's play this out with you then. You know, you're a busy guy. You're at the Athletic now. You just started. You want to make an impact in your own right. You've just got there, and you want to basically do what's right for Ahmed. Someone drops you a DM and says, you know, have you got a quick 10 minutes to talk about this? Have you got this? What are they saying to you to get your attention and get you on side? You know, and what a immediate don't do is if you say that to me, I'm just like, oh, I'm just going to ignore you. Like, what would someone say to you to kind of make you, you know, take an interest?
There's not really a specific thing they'd have to say. To be fair, this has happened quite a bit since I joined the Athletic. I've had a lot of aspiring journalists come to me, DM me, and ask for bits of help, or, you know, ask for certain email addresses, or just bits of advice, or, you know, just for me to look through their pieces, which is, you know, looking back just over a year ago, was exactly what I was doing. I think first of all that shows an initiative. And I'll first of all not congratulate them, but just give them a pat on the back and assure them that exact initiative will stand them in good stead for the career they hope to delve into. With regards to advice, I mean, that's kind of tailored to whoever's asking for the advice. But I definitely keep, because if we're talking about creative industries to break into, those are the most difficult, because particularly if you're talking about someone who's underrepresented. I've had, and I'm pretty sure Maiwa and maybe Faduma can attest to this as well, I've had to battle with imposter syndrome for a very long time. When you don't see many people in the industry who look like you, who talk like you, who are interested in the things that you're interested in, and get your references, it can kind of feel like the light at the end of the tunnel kind of disappears. And you don't really know where you're sort of going, especially in the midst of a pandemic. I was in that exact situation, like I said earlier, with the Tokyo Olympics being postponed. My internship was cancelled as well. And then so I was kind of just sat there. I had a plan to cover the Olympics, and then I was just sort of set free with my qualification. And I was down in the dumps initially, but what I did immediately after was just keep writing, just keep busy. Even if you're not writing, keep learning, learn something new, just try and do something. And when you do publish something, you are I mean, I wouldn't wholly advocate this, but take it with a pinch of salt. Absolutely tag all the journalists that you love, all the people who you want to see it, tag them in. Because they might, like Faduma said earlier, they might see it and they might be busy and they might not be able to interact or whatever. But the chances are they'd have seen it at the very least. And even if they haven't, even if they don't get back to you, even if you don't get the support that you hoped, the resistance to that, your resistance to that has to be so important, is very important, because at times you're going to have to be your own believer. And as difficult as that sounds, it's quite true. And I feel like you're going to have to keep pushing through those difficult moments. So as long as you show initiative, and as long as you're not too pushy, if somebody said they'd get back to you, then trust them to get back to you, because they're a lot busy than you can imagine. But as long as you show initiative, you're polite, and just generally well mannered, I don't see a problem why anyone shouldn't get back to you. And if the first person doesn't get back to you, this always happens, right? If someone will draft an email, they'll find the email address of their favorite writer, and they'll draft this perfect email, send it out to all their friends, and say, look, if I don't get a response to this email, I'm basically done. I don't have all my dreams are shattered. And that's not the way to look at it. Whether it was your first pitch, your first article, your first whatever in this industry, if it's your first time doing something, just take it lightly. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, and just remain calm. Virtually every single person who's made it in this industry, at the time where they got their big break, or at the time where they got that little bump of motivation in the road they needed, they were at their wits' end. I remember speaking to Leon Mann, who's the co-founder of Becoms and Blacklist. Speaking to him about just when he was at the BBC, the amount of obstacles that he faced, just in his whole career, and that fight, that perseverance. If he didn't fight, if he didn't carry on, it's cliche to say, of course, but it's true all the same. If you don't have that perseverance, and you don't have that resistance to just anyone who's against you, whether that's family members, whether that's friends, whether that's anyone, you need to have that resistance and that initiative. I think that's a good, also with manners, that's a good combination to have.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Yeah. Taking in some feedback from everybody and what they talked about, being a self-starter, actually just messaging people, like putting yourself on the line and DMing people, and also realizing that you're not the only one. A lot of these people are getting, as Ahmed said, he's getting a lot of incomings. A lot of people are putting themselves out there and doing it, and you need to be patient. And there's going to be a lot more no's than there are yeses. But when you do find someone, be polite, be concise, and basically make sure that you can kind of actually get what you need, but also make sure that their time's not wasted. But they're actually providing something tangible value to you as an individual. Ashanti, I'm going to come to you in a second, because I think we've talked about the Becoms quite a bit, but if somebody's looking to kind of actually make that jump, where can they look, and how can they potentially get involved with something like the Becoms as well? It'd be great to hear a bit more about that.
I mean, we'd like to think we've helped a few people, but if people are interested in sports media and they come from underrepresented backgrounds, follow us on Twitter. They'll see a lot of job notifications or applications and insights into the industry, and DM us if you want to, if you're interested. We're always open to helping people out, even giving advice, trying to pass on emails, as Ahmed says, and I think Faduma and Mayo have said the same thing. We may not get back within 24 hours, or something may crop up, but sending that second DM or email 2 days later, 3 days later as a polite chase up, we will reply. And yeah, we're very committed to trying to see change in the industry. And I know Mayo touched on it. It's so important to have a different type of diversity behind the camera, because a lot of people want to be in front of the camera or be the writers that are verified on Twitter, but a lot of the real power is behind the camera, or the kind of managing editors of newspapers, because ultimately they're the ones who sign off headlines and articles, or allow writers to go and chase an interesting piece that if they're not tuned in or plugged into perhaps the community or the issue, they're never going to allow that. They're going to say, oh, I don't think it works for us. So it's really, really important. But yeah, there are lots of great resources out there. Goals for Girls, Badu Sports. There are many great, the Jason Roberts Foundation, many great community organizations. And just to kind of round on what the other three have said, I know you didn't touch on it, but all of the messages they're saying are so important and absolutely true. Don't give up. even when you think you want to. Don't give up, and do, if you want to get into journalism, but it's true for most of life, you're probably not going to get yes on the first attempt, but keep being resilient and be polite and adore. Someone will reply to you. And something I heard, which is certainly true, is whether it's a footballer or a writer or a football club, if you DM them or if you email them, there is someone at the end of that email or someone that runs that Twitter account, and you may just catch them at the right time when they're on a train journey going somewhere and they're not particularly busy and they just have time to react to what you've sent over. So yeah, don't give up and be very proactive. Make your own content, because content is king and queen and is so important. And in creative industries, it's far more important to say, I created my own podcast. It may have 10 listeners or it may have 1,000, but the fact that you've gone out there, edited it, put it out there, created a social media account to publicize it, that's way more important than saying, oh, I've got a degree in business from X university or X college, because as Mayor says, he doesn't have a journalism degree or a formal qualification. He's a fantastic writer. It's your education doesn't necessarily define whether you're good or bad in these creative industries.
Good point. And I'm gonna basically head towards the finish and give you all a bit of a run up on thinking on your answer to the next question. I'm going to ask each of you shortly for one bit of advice for you to give to somebody really young. What's the one thing that they can do? And before I ask that question, I want to, Ashanti's given a few, but just trying to throw it open to the floor. Any shout outs for like organizations, industry schemes, applications, tangible bits of things that people could just quickly Google or have a look at that potentially could be, a life changer for some people watching this. So if there's any shout outs that anyone's got, now's the time. Feel free to shout them out. And if there isn't any more, I'll come around for the last question.
I think Ashanti's mentioned a few, but BComs, Goals for Girls, Kick It Out, really weird one, but Gary Taphouse on Twitter, every single day is posting jobs. Like people, one of the major things about football is it's such a big industry, but sometimes you don't know where the jobs are. There are people out there that are going out of the way and saying, listen, I've got all the jobs here. Women in football do that a lot as well. There are so many good organizations, good people that even if they can't help you with the skills, they're trying to point you in the right direction to say, you know what, go over here, try stuff. London Sport, another one. There are so many more, but off the top of my head, those are just a handful that if you definitely check out and keep your eyes peeled, you will see stuff. But even for me, individuals as well, one person I definitely want to mention is Carl Anka. This guy is right after Athletic, but he goes out of his way and he's like, listen, well, I can't do everything. So here, Darren Lewis is the same. I can't physically do everything. So why would I hug onto why would I close the door? The door's open here and go do that. And yeah, I feel that even everyone on this call as well is an advocate of doing that, where if they have opportunities that they can't do or it's not quite right for them, they share it. We're in a WhatsApp group that we share opportunities that we can't do. It's like, I'll do this. And I feel that's quite important, that it's not just about people who are kind of gone clear and established, even people that are getting in. With any opportunity that you have, or with any opportunity that you have to break bread with others, I feel like it's quite important to do so, because it's bigger than us just getting our feet in. It's making sure that this industry can change and be representative of what we think it should be.
Yeah. Any more shout outs?
Yeah, I think definitely agree with all of that. I think stuff like signing up to newsletters, so like BComs do newsletter where you can get jobs every now and again. Women in Football do one. And just going out and seeing it, just trying to find out which type of newsletters are available. I know the BBC do a Kickstarter program and you don't need qualification to apply for that. But then you've also got to bear in mind that thousands of people will apply for that. And what makes people unique for those applications are probably people who have been self-starters and those type of things. So you just got to, I think, be as proactive as you possibly can be. I think it was literally like maybe a week ago that I hosted a really similar type of panel with my boss, Anna, and it was like 60 young people asking about how we can get into journalism, etc. And I think one person emailed us a pitch at the end of that. And that's what you got to do. Like, you know, you don't want to be one of those people that just listen to it. It's like, take that And it's like, you know, something might come of that pitch, something might not, but we now know Hannah's name, and that's because she sent us that email. And, you know, and that's what you've got to remember is like, you know, eventually something will come from those things. So you just got to persevere. But BBC, I think, definitely do a Kickstarter scheme, and local newspapers, and me and, you know, Ahmed have both benefited from the NCTJ's Journalism Diversity Fund, which has paid for our courses. Because as much as we'd love the industry to take people based on, you know, how well you write, some places will still ask you for those qualifications. So if you can get a step ahead and apply for those, and you can get them in a way where you don't actually pay for the cost of them, because they are quite costly, I'll definitely look into the Journalism Diversity Fund.
And so Journalism Diversity Fund, so a quick Google will bring up all you need to know on that.
Yeah, and that will bring you up, like, you know, they've got various ones. They've got one for like women in the world of journalism. They've got sports specific one, which I think is the one that Ahmed did. So they've got lots of different ones across the year, and it's just a case of applying and really showing like how you stand out for that process.
Okay, and that's fantastic.
Final one from me, sorry. Livewire Sport do a mentoring program called Diversity in Digital. So give a shout out to them. You know, they're a diverse organization, and they want to change the way that digital media is run. And I think that phones and social media are a massive equalizer. You know, most of us have access to the internet. Most of us have a phone. So to become great using social media and making GIFs and all that kind of thing, and creating tailored content for Twitter and Instagram can be done at the touch of a phone, and so doesn't require perhaps the qualifications and the educational background that, you know, traditional linear journalism may require. So certainly Livewire Sports Diversity and Digital program.
Great, you took my one as well. So for that, you're going first. 30 seconds or less. One bit of advice for anyone up and coming in at school age and looking to get into the industry.
Network, bang the doors. Don't be afraid. You know, the Aldridge Foundation can pass on my email or some of my panelists. Don't take, you know, no for an answer just because you might get one no. Keep banging the doors, and yeah, network, make yourself available, because it's a hard industry and only the tough will survive. So yeah, just keep working, and trust me, your opportunity will come at some point.
Fair enough. Faduma, do you want to go next?
Yeah, definitely second everything Ashanti said, but also I would say make friends as well as, like, you know, people within your age group and your peers, because, you know, myself, Ahmed, and Maya, we always are in a WhatsApp group. But I'm the first one to like message them, like, guys, this is a disaster, no one's getting back to me, and you need that boost of encouragement, you know, to feel like you're not the only person that's definitely doing that. There's lots of people around you who are doing it, and equally, you know, you can share those opportunities when they do, because luckily I think we're all in positions now where we can't do everything, but we're the first ones to share around with each other. But at the same time, you do need, like, you know, your friends around you. So make lots of good friends whilst you're in the industry and continue to knock on people's doors.
Fantastic. Ahmed?
A bit of a weird one, I think. Well, not necessarily weird, but every publication, depending on what industry you want to go to, they have a set structure or format for their emails. And if you can try and figure that out and guess one email, you'll get every single other email. And if you really, really, really want to talk to your favorite writers and favorite producers and favorite editors, you'll do that, because that's what I did. And it might not work, but I think it goes again to show that initiative. The worst thing they can say is no. And I don't think they will, to be honest. If they feel like I don't give my email out and this person's managed to find it, and they're asking for my help, like, when you show that initiative, you, like, a journalist who's made it will see a younger version of themselves in you, because that's the initiative they had. So it's just an easy way that not many people think about, especially now, because networking in person is kind of out the window with COVID. That's the best way to sort of get your foot in the door, I feel like. So just don't be afraid to send those emails out. I'd also suggest scheduling them for 7 a.m. So when they check the email in the morning, that's the first thing they see. Listen, it's the little things that count, man.
Ahmed, speaking from the heart here, because that's exactly what I do as well. So that's you've given the game away. You've given the game away for.
Listen, I got to help. I got to help the next generation, man. I got to help them come through. These are the little gems that they need. But yeah, those are the two bits of advice I give.
And Mewab, what have you got for one bit of advice?
Everything everyone said is so true. I think, man, it falls into two parts. It's enjoy your proactiveness. Like, be proactive, but whatever you're doing, make sure you enjoy it. We have all talked about fatigue or feeling like you may not be able to bust the door down. But if you enjoy what you're doing, that will give you the stamina to keep going, even if you're knocked back. And the second one is your friendship groups or your friends or your marketing strategy. If you're creating something and you've got 40 friends or you've got 40 people in a WhatsApp group, if you get every one of them to share it and someone that they know shares it, suddenly the way you were failing to hit audience before, you can suddenly do that. It's very easy if you utilize your friendship groups, because these are your friends, they should be helping you. That's how friendships work, you help each other. You can really cause shockwaves if you really believe what you're doing and get your friends to believe in it and share it and push it as well. So those are the two main things I would say.
Fantastic. And just to kind of, before I give mine as well, just kind of wrapping it up, massive thanks to everybody for the time. And just to kind of complete the set, for me, there's two bits of advice. Ashanti kind of took mine, and I'd echo everybody, but I echo what everyone says about networking, numbers and the little hacks to get forwards. For me, is always have an ask. Like, if somebody turns around genuinely with a willingness saying, how can I help you? Have an answer for that question. Because if the answer is, I need to get an internship, I need you to look over my, whatever it is for you, have an ask, because there's nothing more frustrating than actually wanting to help someone, but them not necessarily knowing what it is that you can do to help them. And the second one, to kind of segue on from a couple of comments, is always ask, is there anybody else that you know that I should speak to? Or is there anybody else kind of, because that the power of numbers, and suddenly they might turn around and there's another conversation and suddenly that ball starts rolling. And look, there's been some amazing tips, and thank you everyone for the time, the tangible knowledge, and hopefully if even just one person watching this takes action on it, and look forward to seeing people progress in the industry, because God, it all needs it, doesn't it? So look, massive thanks for the time, everybody. And thanks for watching.